Namaste. Now in India, every time you speak up against fascism, you're often branded a liberando. And I consider myself a liberal, at least in the traditional sense of the term, in that I actually am up for progressive values. But of course, there has to be a certain kind of a balance in diatribe. But it's a really bad time to be a liberal or a liberando in India right now, because we really don't have any kind of a poster child, right? I mean, there's really no one out there who's championing our cause. Sure, I mean, every now and then there is a Kanhaiya Kumar who comes up and he offers some strong rebuttals to the men in power, but he's not able to sustain it. And he's not able to enter the parliament either. So it's a bit of a problem right now. There seems to be this vacuum when it comes to the voice of dissidents from the opposition, right? Up until recently, of course, thankfully there is a Mahua Moitra, because up until Mahua Moitra, there was really no one in the parliament who could really stand up and talk up against the establishment. I mean, when was the last time you even remember an outstanding speech coming from the opposition in parliament? It's almost always been Narendra Modi and every now and then a Sushma Swaraj, right? But recently, in her opening speech in the parliament, Mahua Moitra took the floor by storm. Okay, it was an amazing speech. She was a firebrand Bengali politician, and it was amazing to watch. I mean, not just for the fact that she had some really good points. I mean, the name of her speech is called 7 Early Signs of Early Fascism. Of course, she had some really good points, which we'll be talking about. But more than that, it was just a whole sheer theatrical aspect of her speech. I mean, she was going at it. I mean, she was talking to the head of the Lok Sabha, and she was telling him, she was talking to the chair, she was like, get the house in order, you know, all these professional hecklers should shut up. And it was amazing. It was just amazing to watch. I, for instance, loved the fact that she went into the Super Saiyan mode. And more than that, I mean, the MP sitting in the back, I mean, she was another Bengali MP, I don't know her name, but she was like Kali Mata has risen, it's happening, oh my god. It was amazing to watch. But, there's some really good reactions that are coming out of, in the aftermath of that particular speech, especially on social media. And what I really like to watch is that she has scared a lot of media lapdogs like Mr. Sudhir Chaudhary, okay, who has accused her of plagiarizing the entire speech. Now, Mr. Sudhir Chaudhary, if you know, is a journalist, if you want to call him that, and he was also one of those guys who talked about, who spread the story of there were some chips in the new 2000 rupee notes, which is ridiculous.
रुपए के हर एक नोट पर NGC यानी नैनो GPS चिप लगा हुआ होगा.
And it's a little shady coming from him, accusing Mahua Moitra of plagiarizing the entire thing, because not for the fact that people don't plagiarize stuff, I mean everyone does, it's just that it's a little hard to digest the fact that he actually bothered to read something. Anyway, so we are not big fans of the TMC, let's just lay it out there, because if anyone has as much blood on their hands with regard to fascism, it is the Mamata government. But that is not to say that we cannot really stand up and applaud Mahua Moitra's speech in the parliament. I mean, we can evaluate on the basis of its own standalone merits, and that is what we're going to do right today. We are going to talk about the good, the bad and the ugly of the speech by Mahua Moitra in the parliament. Now, before we move ahead, I think it's best that we list out the 7 early signs of fascism which she spoke about. It started with the first one being superficial nationalism, then came disdain of human rights. The third one was suppression of dissent. The fourth is control of media. Fifth is the obsession with national security. Sixth is mixing religion and government. And the seventh one, lastly, is lust to divide, not unite. Okay, now she had a cracked voice during her speech, but she was able to power through and soar over the other hecklers in on the house. And it doesn't really take a genius to see that she's going to be the new poster woman for on the liberal front, at least for the next 5 years. People will be looking to her to as a person to stand up and actually initiate some kind of a counter narrative in the parliament. All right. Now, most of the things that she spoke about in the parliament happens to be standard fare as far as diatribe against the establishment goes. But there are some really good aspects that we can talk about. So let's just get down into the good first, then we will discuss the bad and then the ugly, right? Now, what we loved about her speech was her point on the suppression of dissent hit right home. Okay, we have seen suppression of voices from the stalwarts of civil society, be it artists, be it journalists, be it activists, and even movies to a large extent. And what has happened as a result of preempting some kind of a backlash right now is that a lot of these artists, these journalists, activists and scientists have sort of taken on a self-censorship of sorts. I mean, they're starting to now evaluate their work before even publishing it. They're like, will this go out? I mean, what will happen? Will I be called out? That's really not the way to go. And we really loved Mahua Moitra's points on how dissent is at the core of the Indian argumentative spirit. I mean, that's something that we truly believe in, and it's something worth championing. Now, irrespective whether the voice of dissent is making some valid points or some invalid points, there has to be something, there has to be a counter narrative, and it can be debated and then it can be thrashed about, but someone really has to stand up and at least call out the elephant in the room, and that is something that we loved about her speech. We absolutely loved it. Okay, now, hey, I mean, again, let's just evaluate the speech with respect to its immediate context in the parliament. Let's not, judge her and her association with the TMC. For instance, if you had to do that, if you had to take things out of context, I would like to talk about that one particular farmer called Sudhir Chaudhary, who raised his voice against the Mamata government and said that she hadn't really held her end of the bargain as far as the electoral promises go. This happened way back in 2012. It happened at a rally, at a Mamata rally, and he was arrested. Okay, and how about the handling of another voice of dissent, a certain Professor Ambikesh Mohapatra, who is a professor from the Jadavpur University, who was arrested for circulating some not so flattering cartoons of Mamata Di. Okay, let's just ignore that fact. I mean, it does tantamount to what is that phrase? I mean, it's called the kettle calling the something black, right? I mean, what is it? The pot calling the kettle black. It doesn't amount to that. So let's just let that slide, shall we? The other great point that she made, which is definitely a good point, is of her allusion to how media is being controlled today, and that is actually a very valid point. The only thing that pulls down that particular point is the fact that media has always been partisan for the longest time. I mean, let's just go back all the way to the late 90s when a certain media house was established out in the corridors of New Delhi. Every media outlet since then has been partisan, has either been playing up an apologetic leftist doctrine, or as a counter narrative to that, now you have media outlets that are brazenly right-wing, in your face, and come what may, they will champion the cause of the establishment. That is a given today. Alright, now let's talk about the bad of Mahua Moitra. She talks about the sixth point, in which she accuses the government of mixing religion and governance. Okay, now we cannot agree with this. Mainly because this government is not the first one to do that. It has been the case since the constitution was established, mainly because the constitution doesn't make it amply clear in the legal word. Okay, it's not black and white. Religion and governance and policy has mixed for the longest time, and there is enough of a case made in the constitution in its favor. There's no line demarcating like this is a go area, this is a no go area, this is where the Supreme Court comes in, this is not where the Supreme Court comes in. None of that. So it's not enough saying that India is a secular country. We actually are not, if you look at the constitution. And secularism in India doesn't translate to the core definition of secularism that we see in the West. It is ambiguous at best, and it's a sad point. Just one case in point, if you really want to argue in favor of this particular point, how religion and governance and policy making will always be mixed, and it is sort of recognized by the constitution. Just look at the Sabarimala controversy. We actually made a great video on it a long time ago, and its system of myths are being interfered by the Supreme Court of all people. Why is that? If religion, governance and policy were to be separated, we would never have the Sabarimala controversy reaching all the way to the Supreme Court. That's just not fair, okay? Now let's come to the ugly aspect of Mahua Moitra's speech, which is very strange. She was accused of plagiarizing the entire speech, and this is in reference to one particular article written by a certain Martin Longman, who is an American gentleman. He's a political commentator of sorts. He wrote this article, I think it's the 12 early signs of fascism, and it was against the Donald Trump administration at the time. Now, he became an internet sensation in his own words, and he had a rebuttal of sorts to people who were insinuating the fact that Miss Moitra plagiarized his speech. It was very tastefully done. Now, here's the funny bit. He proceeded to compare Sudhir Chaudhary to journalists, American journalists like Tucker Carlson and Hannity. And in that, he basically spoke about how there are certain media outlets like Fox, just like that, there are right-wing media outlets across the world. Okay, that's what his point was. Now, what should have happened actually is that Sudhir Chaudhary should have issued an apology, at least a public apology, but he actually held his ground and he dug in. He went after Martin Longman with another tweet and Miss Moitra. He seems to be obsessed with her. Now, bear in mind, this is the same Sudhir Chaudhary who insinuated that there were chips in our 2000 rupee notes, and he basically published a series of stories on this. Now, if you go to his Wikipedia page, okay, he's renowned to be an right-wing journalist, okay, and right-wing journalist. I mean, it is his Wikipedia page literally lists down 6 reasons why he is a fake news anchor and a propagandist. I mean, if anything, he needs a better PR machinery. But that's not serious. Sadly, that is not the case. People don't stand up and own up to their mistakes, and they don't backtrack. And this is a war that we will most likely see panning out for the next 5 years. Miss Moitra is going to be the liberal poster child up against the establishment, and she will probably be the only voice of dissent that we can probably bank on. I mean, her speech in English was excellent, great diction. There's really no one else in the parliament who can probably match up to that kind of a diatribe apart from a Mr. Shashi Tharoor, right? He is fantastic at that. But yeah, I mean, it's a sad state of affairs. I mean, in India, it's going to be at least 100 years before we reach what the American First Amendment. I mean, we need to reach that stage of the American First Amendment in India, and it's going to take a bit of doing, but it starts with baby steps. Now, we may not agree with everything that Miss Moitra puts out. We are not fans of her party at all, but we definitely welcome the fact that there is a counter narrative now. There is a voice that is piping up, and hopefully she inspires many more, and there are many more such debates in the parliament. Otherwise, we'll just be like discussing Vande Mataram while China takes over and things are just going to go to dogs. So that's about it from me, and yeah, peace.